What if your entire existence is an invisible labyrinth, not built of stone walls, but of inherited dogma, accepted without examination from your first breath? What you call reality is a vibrational matrix shaped by minds you've never met. The thoughts you believe are yours, the emotions that inhabit you, the boundaries you accept. They could simply be the program of a collective system replicating itself through you. Not a physical prison, but a cage made of distorted light, perfectly disguised as normality. Here is the paradoxical truth. Manifestation is possible precisely because nothing you perceive is substantial. Reality transforms only when you transfigure yourself. This awakening begins with a revelation. Your true power lies not in doing, but in being. If these words reach you now, it is because your consciousness has passed the critical threshold. Do not look away. What follows could forever reprogram your perceptual system. As long as you allow the collective unconscious to dictate your existential code, you will mistake it for destiny. What if your inner flame was veiled before you even learned to recognize it? If at this moment you feel a thrill of recognition, if you sense that this encounter is not a coincidence, leave your seal immediately. That like is not an empty gesture. It is your quantum, here I am, a coded message that I translate as, I see, I understand, let's proceed. When that thumb goes up, I recognize a cosmic traveling companion. From this moment on, the frequency changes. Ready? Now let's enter the abyss. From the moment you arrived here, the world began to shape you. Aspects, words, expectations, rules. Everything was programmed to make you adapt to standards, to programs, to ideas that existed long before you. You were not taught to discover who you are, you were trained to adapt. Little by little, without realizing it, your power was wrapped up, labeled, silenced. And all this did not happen cruelly or violently, but gently, with conditional praise, rewards for obedience, and small punishments whenever you dared to show too much of who you really were. But when did you learn that feeling deeply was too much? That dreaming big was unrealistic? That questioning the system was rebellion? Each idea was another layer in the invisible prison around you. As you learned to follow, your divine power learned to be silent. The truth is, you never stopped being who you are. You were just conditioned to forget it. You believed that the outside world was solid, real, unchanging. That matter was all there was. That time was a line that moved in one direction. That space was something that limited you. But all of this is a mental construct. The reality you know is a frequency you were taught, not chosen. You were made to believe that this is just the way it is, period. But this reality that seems so concrete is ultimately a vibrational mirror. It only reflects what is emitted. If you emit fear, limitation, exhaustion, or doubt, that is exactly what you will see out there. This is where you begin to understand how your power has been put to sleep. It hasn't disappeared. It has been reduced, compressed, adjusted to fit into a narrow, limited, automatic narrative. The most dangerous part is that all of this happened with your permission, not because you chose to, but because you were taught not to question it. You believe that certain things are only for some, that miracles are for the movies, that manifestation is only for the lucky ones, that spirituality is a luxury for those with time. So you lived small, felt big, but lived small. Your divine power was there, pulsing inside you, but no one told you how to use it. No one showed you that you don't have to wait for permission to be whole. Every time you accepted scarcity as normal, suffering as inevitable, pain as part of the human package, you gave away a piece of your power to illusion. Little by little, you began to believe that prison was comfortable, that it was safer to live with less than to risk expansion, that it was better to follow the rules than to trust your intuition. So your divine power was bent until it no longer felt like you. But it's still there. It just needs a crack, a moment of clarity, a spark of truth. Because when you feel that something is wrong, that life can't be just this, that there's more, it's your power trying to rise again. It's whispering through the vibrational bars, "Let me out." But illusion is clever. It updates. It disguises itself as common sense, responsibility, maturity. It says that dreaming is a waste of time, that wanting more is ingratitude, that it cannot be changed now. If you believe it, you strengthen the wall yourself. You consolidate the prison with the bricks of your beliefs. Reality reflects exactly what you carry inside. If you carry limitation, that is what you will find out there. Because that is the game. A game that only works as long as you believe the prison is real. You can only manifest because none of this is real. But the question that inevitably echoes is, if the prison is real, how can I get out of it? What if it isn't? Here everything starts to unravel, because the prison only works as long as you believe in it. What if it isn't solid? What if everything you call reality is just a temporary vibrational construct? Something fluid, unstable, subject to perception, belief, and inner state. The answer may shock you. You can only manifest because none of this is real. That's right. The only reason you can change your experience, rewrite your story, transform your life is precisely because what you see, touch, and call reality is not fixed. It is not absolute. It is not eternal. You live in a field of illusion, but not in the superficial sense of the word. It is an energetic, mental, symbolic illusion. A setup built on the frequencies that you and billions of other consciousnesses are constantly emitting. It is a stage, a hologram, and this stage reshapes itself every moment according to the dominant vibration of your being. There are no concrete walls to support what you call the world. What holds it all together is belief, vibration, observation. That is why modern physics has begun to admit what the ancients already knew. Reality responds to the observer. Particles change behavior when they are measured. What is out there depends on what is in here. Consciousness is not in the world. The world is in consciousness. This is where your power really begins to awaken, because if reality is unstable, then it can be molded. If it is not a rigid and eternal structure, then it is malleable, reprogrammable, alchemizable. And that is exactly where your divine power comes in. It is not designed to function within fixed structures. It only operates in vibrational fields. It only works in flow. It only manifests when you understand that the game is symbolic, mental, and energetic. But here is the detail that almost no one has told you. Most people try to manifest using prison rules. They use techniques, repetitions, visualizations, but all based on beliefs that are still illusionary. They want to manifest abundance, but deep down they believe the world is scarce. They want to attract love, but they carry the wound of rejection. They want freedom, but they vibrate fear. Result? The manifestation doesn't work, or it works for a while and then it collapses, because you are trying to redraw the stage using materials from the same old cell. You are trying to write a new story with the old ink of programming. And that's why you keep going around in circles. You manifest something, then you lose it. You attract something, then you sabotage it. You take a step forward, then you slip back. Because you are using your power according to the laws of the prison, not the laws of consciousness. True manifestation doesn't happen when you force the world to change. It happens when you change the field the world is projected into. It's like changing the lens of the projector. There's no point in struggling with the images on the screen. What you see out there is only a reflection of what you put out here. But that requires a pause. It requires stopping the way illusion has taught you to think. It requires stopping using your power to fit into the prison, and instead using it to dissolve the bars. And that pause isn't external. It begins as a point of silence, an internal space where for a moment you stop believing everything, where you question the foundations of your reality, where you ask yourself, what if everything I see is just a repetition of my unconscious vibration? From there, the stage begins to shift. Situations around you change. People who once vibrated with you disappear. New ones arrive. Reality, which once seemed so solid, begins to give way because it has always been malleable. It just needed you to stop repeating what you had been taught and start vibrating the truth buried within you. Because here's the truth, you may be trying to manifest using someone else's energy. What does that mean? It means that even with good intentions, even with awareness, even with effort, you may still be vibrating inside someone else's past, inside ideas that aren't yours, inside dreams that aren't even yours. And this explains why so many people feel like they live a stuck, repetitive, insipid life. A life that doesn't fit well, even when everything seems right on paper. Have you ever stopped to think that most of your reality was inherited? Where you live, the language you speak, the religion you were taught, the way you handle money, love, work, all of this was absorbed before you even knew who you were. Mental codes entered without asking permission through voices you trusted, parents, teachers, leaders, media, and it's not that they did it with bad intentions, they were just repeating what they too had inherited. This chain of repetition is ancient. It passes from mind to mind like a vibrational echo that no one has ever stopped to really listen to. And when you don't question that echo, it becomes your identity. You start to think that's you, that you're anxious, limited, insecure, small. But none of that is you. It's the accumulation of unresolved vibrations that have been passed down through the generations and are now in your field. Everything you attract, everything you call life, responds to those frequencies. And here's the subtlest and most dangerous detail. Those vibrations from someone else's past are so old, so familiar that they feel natural. You don't even realize that you're carrying your mother's pain, your father's fears, the unresolved failures of your lineage, the traumas of your collective. And if there is no awakening point, you will continue to try to manifest a new reality inside someone else's emotional architecture. It is like trying to build a sacred temple on ancient ruins without ever clearing the ground. The foundation is still contaminated. No matter how beautiful it is on the outside, something does not hold. Something collapses, and you blame yourself without knowing that what fails is not you. It is the inherited foundation. This is why so many people keep repeating stories they hate but can't get out of. Always the same relationship, always the same professional frustration, always the same fear of money. It's as if everything is already programmed, running in the background, determining what is possible and what is not. And it is, because without awareness, collective programming continues to run the script. But the question that changes everything is this: what if you stopped repeating? What if you stop trying to manifest from inherited pain, inherited scarcity, inherited anxiety? What if you stopped for a moment just to ask, is this really from me? This goal, this desire, this fear, this urge, is it really mine? This is where true manifestation begins. Not with techniques, not with formulas, but with clarity, with the courage to look within and separate what is truly yours from what you have brought forth out of unconscious loyalty. For only after you have cleared the field does your divine power have room to operate. Until then, everything you seek to manifest will be distorted by the noise of others. It will be filtered through the beliefs of others. It will be limited by the versions of others. But what if, instead of reproducing inherited vibrations, you drew on who you truly are? Knowing yourself is the alchemy that activates true power. This is where alchemy begins. Not the alchemy of ancient laboratories, of external vials and formulas, but the alchemy within, the vibrational transmutation. Because knowing yourself is not just a symbolic or philosophical act, it is a profound reconfiguration of your frequency. It is when you stop functioning as a reflection of the world and start radiating your own light. Self-knowledge in its highest sense is the point where your consciousness stops being passive and becomes active. Before you only reacted, now you govern. Before you repeated what you felt, now you choose what you emanate. And that choice changes everything, because what you emanate shapes time, and time shapes reality. You don't realize how much you're operating on automatic until you first feel the presence of your essence. When that happens, everything slows down. The noise of the world begins to fade away. Automatic reactions stop. Stop responding to everything with anxiety, with fear, with urgency. And in that silence, something awakens. It is subtle but unmistakable. It is like a forgotten voice that says, "Now we are back." This is what the ancients called the awakening of the divine spark. It never left. It was just asleep under layers and layers of illusion. When you reach it, something inside you changes. You no longer feel small in the face of reality. You realize that you are the one moving reality around you. You begin to influence time with your presence. And this is literal because time is not a clock. It is vibration. If your vibration is fragmented, time around you repeats itself. It gets stuck. It traps you in cycles. But when you vibrate in coherence, time opens up. It flows with you. It collaborates. The entire universe rearranges the pieces on the chessboard because it responds to the awakened consciousness. And that is when you stop being a prisoner of other people's reality and become the alchemist of your own existence. But for this to happen, you have to stop looking outside. Because as long as you look for answers outside, you are trying to put together a puzzle with pieces that were not made for you. True alchemy begins the moment you turn your gaze inward. Not to judge, not to correct, but to remember. Remember what has been forgotten. Remember your original vibration. Remember the point before programming. Because there is something in you that has never been touched by pain, by scarcity, by fear. Something that has always been whole, and that part is where the real power lies. That power doesn't scream. It doesn't force itself. It doesn't show off. It just is. It vibrates. It sustains. It transmutes. It is the gold the alchemists were looking for. Not outside, but inside. The gold of consciousness, the glow of inner truth. And when you find it, everything changes without you having to change everything. Because the world begins to respond to your frequency with precision, without effort, without struggle. But that memory requires courage. Courage to look inside yourself honestly. Courage to let go of versions of yourself that are no longer yours. Courage to stop playing roles that have been forced upon you. Because the hypnotic cycle continues only as long as you refuse to wake up. And waking up is dangerous to the illusion, because an awake being deactivates the collective spell without saying a word. And when you touch that state of being, something happens. It is not spectacular, it is subtle but irreversible. You begin to see, not with your eyes, but with your consciousness. And from that moment on, your presence begins to influence the space around you. Because the world does not change when you force it. The world changes when you vibrate in truth. But are you really willing to remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? That's where something invisible begins to dissolve. Your relationship with time. Because time, as you've been taught to understand it, is a trap. It appears as a line. A past that has passed. A present that slips away. And a future you relentlessly chase. But that line is a construct. It's a sophisticated component of the simulation, a track programmed to keep you in perpetual motion without ever getting you anywhere. And you don't even realize you're running on a treadmill. You're trying to manifest a better future, but you're doing it based on the pain you carry from the past. You want to create something new, but you're emitting vibrations tied to what has already been. And the more you try to force a new destiny without cleansing the source of your vibration, the more time acts like a shattered mirror, reflecting distorted fragments of everything you haven't healed yet. That's why you feel stuck, because despite your best efforts, time seems to drag you back to the same patterns. This is what we call a time loop, an invisible repetition in which the same feelings generate the same thoughts, which generate the same choices, which generate the same results. Time bends, it rotates, it surrounds you, and the outside world just responds. But what almost no one understands is that time is not the enemy. It is just a stage, a path on which consciousness walks, learns, experiences. Time does not punish you. It only reflects the state of your presence, because time in itself is neutral. What distorts it is the way you move through it. If you walk through it with fear, it responds with delays. If you walk through it with guilt, it compresses. If you walk through it with faith, it expands. If you walk through it with presence, it stops. Because true divine power does not operate in linear time. It does not need sequences, permissions, or logic. It does not drag. It bursts in. Divine power acts according to a different coordinate, simultaneity, what the ancients called kairos, the time of the spirit, a moment in which the eternal touches the instant and everything changes, not because you acted externally, but because something inside you has realigned. And suddenly, what seemed impossible, distant, or slow simply happens. Without gradual steps, without accumulation, the manifestation appears as a leap, as if it came from nowhere. But it does not come from nowhere, it comes from the center. And only those who stop repeating can access that center. Only those who realize that linear time is a script and choose to step out of the role. Because as long as you try to build the future out of fear of the past, you will continue to create more of the same. But when you begin to fill time with the vibration of what is already essentially yours, time stops limiting you and begins to serve you. And that is when time becomes a portal. But are you still measuring your life by the clock, or have you started measuring it by your consciousness? You influence time by what you are vibrating right now. Because when you finally break free from the linear structure of time, what opens up is not the future, it is the real now. The real present is not the second ticking on a clock. It is not the interval between what has already happened and what is yet to come. The here and now is a vibrational state, a point of purity, a space in which consciousness is no longer dragged by stories, memories, or projections. It simply is, without past, without haste, without fear. And that is where your divine power lights up. There is no longer any need to force, to obsessively plan, to chase something to feel complete. Because in that state, you are no longer trying to shape reality through effort. You vibrate in tune with it. And when there is alignment, there is no resistance. Reality begins to reorganize around your presence because presence is magnetic. It is as if the universe instantly recognizes that something has awakened, and then it bows. This is the space beyond time, what the masters called eternity in motion. Here, manifestation is no longer a mental process, but a vibrational consequence. Things don't have to be attracted, they emerge, they respond, they reflect what you already are, not what you are trying to achieve. The paradox is simple but powerful. You manifest only when you stop trying to manifest, because the attempt comes from the belief that something is missing. But to be is to recognize that everything already is. And the now, when experienced as a state of being and not as a mental moment, becomes the direct access point to the source. And you begin to notice a subtle but profound detail. Time was trapping you because you were trying to control it, but it was just waiting for you to be present enough to allow it to open up. And when that happens, you no longer have to fight it. It bends to what you put out, because time always responds to your vibration. It doesn't punish you, it simply gives you back what you're holding on to right now. And that's inevitable. If you vibrate scarcity, it will show you where you still believe there's not enough. If you vibrate control, it will test you until you let go. If you vibrate truth, it will open doors that no one else could have opened for you. The key is not in doing to get, it's in being to reveal. Because when you declare who you are, not with words but with the frequency of your being, time recognizes it. Matter responds. The flow aligns. Not because you have forced something onto reality, but because you have cleared the channel through which reality flows. That is why ancient traditions said that awakened consciousness is the only force that dominates illusion, because illusion obeys vibration and vibration obeys presence. This means that your life does not change when you want it to, but when you embody it. Being is the language that the universe understands, and it is when you begin to be that everything begins to happen. But then comes the moment when many get lost, when they try to make it work. The mind, still conditioned by the old paradigm, insists on looking for shortcuts. So you start making lists, repeating affirmations, sticking quotes to the mirror, following step-by-step methods as if it were possible to force the universe to obey a pre-established plan. And maybe for a while it works, but soon the old anxiety returns. Frustration creeps in, that feeling that, although you are doing everything right, nothing really changes. That's when you have to understand technique fails, presence transforms, because technique, however well-intentioned, is born from the idea that something is wrong and needs to be fixed. Presence doesn't fix anything, it reveals what has always been there. This is where manifestation stops being a goal and becomes an outcome. It's no longer about visualizing every day. It's not about trying to believe. It's about being whole within yourself every moment. True manifestation happens when your vibration aligns with who you truly are. And that doesn't take effort, it takes presence. And presence is practice. It's when you notice yourself speeding up and you choose to stop. It's when a thought of scarcity comes up and you observe instead of reacting. It's when you take a deep breath before you decide. It's when you feel something uncomfortable, but you don't abandon yourself again. This is presence. This is conscious vibration. This is divine power in action. Want a simple exercise? Close your eyes now. Take 3 breaths. Feel the air coming in and out without trying to control it. And ask yourself silently, what am I emitting right now? Don't judge yourself for the answer. Just observe. From that observation, choose a new frequency. It could be gratitude, it could be courage, it could be love. Stop waiting for the universe's permission to change your frequency. True power comes when you reverse the equation. It is not reality that must transform for you to change your vibration, but your vibration that sculpts reality. When your field radiates absolute coherence, cosmic laws respond without friction. No more begging, no more doors to break down, just perfect alignment, where every opportunity unfolds at the exact moment. This state is not conquered, it is remembered. It is a silence so deep that it puts into crisis the conditioned mind, accustomed to fighting, calculating, manipulating. But the Absolute does not operate through effort. It responds to the purity of your essence. It recognizes only authenticity. And what is authentic does not need to prove itself. It radiates, transmutes, creates by pure being. Here is the ultimate secret. Everything you perceive, the mirror, your work, your relationships, your circumstances, is a vibrational hologram. A temporary reflection of what you and the collective have accepted as real. But any mental structure can dissolve in an instant of pure presence. You have been programmed to believe that you are limited, incomplete, at the mercy of the world. But if this prison is made only of frequencies, then it is made of your own substance. And what is made of your substance can be reshaped by your consciousness. No external revolutions are needed. Just one moment of perfect remembrance. You do not use power. You are power. You do not manifest from reality. You manifest reality. If these words have ignited the memory of the original fire in you, act now. A like is the seal of your awakening. I recognize myself in the comments is your first creative act. Subscription is your entry into the new paradigm. The world does not have to change for you to be free. Be free and watch the world transform. If you have come this far, know, no encounter is accidental. See you soon beyond the veil.